we know a lot about what is 2 miles and 3 miles down. It isn't being shared with the public, but our government and probably other governments know quite a bit.
Antarctica is one of the most isolated places on Earth, a place where temperatures fall so low that survival itself becomes a challenge. For most of human history, it has remained outside the attention of the world. However, recently, Linda Moulton Howe, an Emmy Award-winning reporter known for documenting unusual and controversial accounts from military personnel, scientists, and government insiders, has once again brought Antarctica into focus in a way that challenges conventional understanding. And according to the testimonies she has collected, Antarctica may not be as empty or lifeless as it appears. So what has been hidden beneath ice all this time? Let's get into this dark side of Antarctica that Linda has spent years investigating. The first witness. Antarctica was first seen in 1820 by explorers from Russia. At that time, people did not understand what this frozen land really held. They only saw endless ice, strong winds, and a place too dangerous for normal travel. For many years, no one tried to go deep inside this continent. It remained empty on maps, quiet and untouched. But by the late 20th century, things changed. Countries began sending missions for research, and aircraft started flying across the frozen land. One such mission happened in 1982. In 1982, a U.S. Navy flight engineer took part in a routine supply mission. The flight started from McMurdo Station and moved toward a remote research camp deep inside Antarctica. The crew followed standard procedures, and the weather remained harsh but expected. Then something went wrong. An equipment problem forced the aircraft to land early on a ridge. Strong winds hit the plane, and the temperature dropped so low that exposed skin could freeze in seconds. The crew focused on fixing the issue quickly so they could leave that dangerous place. But while the others worked, the flight engineer looked out across the ridge. He noticed shapes in the distance that did not match the natural landscape. He saw clean lines, sharp angles, and perfect symmetry. Ice never forms like that. Snow does not create straight edges or smooth surfaces. He moved closer to get a better look. What he saw stopped him completely. Part of a massive structure stood exposed where wind had removed layers of ice over time. It looked solid and carefully shaped. The surface did not look like rock, and it did not look like ice. It looked like something built with intention. Before he could go further, the radio came alive. The crew followed the command and left the area without delay. When they landed, things became even stranger. Intelligence officers waited for them. They separated the crew and questioned each person alone. They took the flight logs and marked them as classified. Each crew member signed non-disclosure agreements. Then they gave one clear instruction. This never happened. The flight engineer stayed silent for many years. He kept his promise and never spoke about what he saw. Time passed, and his life moved forward. Nearly 20 years later, everything changed. In 1998, after retiring and entering his 70s, he decided to speak before time ran out. He reached out to Linda Moulton Howe, an American investigative journalist and Emmy Award-winning television producer known for her work on unexplained phenomena. She had reported on science, environmental issues, and controversial subjects that often sat outside mainstream discussion. Over time, she became recognized for documenting eyewitness accounts related to UFO sightings. For decades, she had built a reputation for listening carefully and preserving testimony in detail. She listened carefully and recorded every word the flight engineer shared. He told her about the mission, the landing, and the structure he saw in 1982. He gave details about the location, the flight path, and the crew involved. Linda did not rush to publish his story. She checked his service record and confirmed his background. Everything matched. She knew the story sounded unbelievable, but the facts were real. Still, she waited. She believed one witness alone could not prove something this big. She placed his testimony aside and kept it private. At that time, she did not know that this was only the beginning. But over the next few years, similar accounts like this would begin to surface. The strange pattern. After the first witness spoke in 1998, Linda Moulton Howe did not rush to tell the world. She kept everything quiet and continued her work as an investigative journalist. Then, something unexpected started happening. Over the next 20 years, more people began to contact her. They came from different places and different times. Some worked in the Navy. Some were scientists. None of them knew each other, and none of them had shared their stories before. But they all described something very similar. One geophysicist told Linda that he had worked with ice-penetrating radar surveys in Antarctica. During one mission, he saw strange readings beneath the ice. These were not small gaps or cracks. These were large, empty spaces, deep under the surface. The shapes looked regular and organized, not random like natural caves. He reported the data to his supervisor. His supervisor went silent, then quickly ordered the data to be classified. Within hours, the information disappeared from the system. His entire team got reassigned, and no one allowed them to speak about it again. Another witness came from a Navy CB construction battalion. He described a mission where his team traveled miles away from any known research station. They did not receive a normal scientific briefing. They only got one instruction: drill straight down. When they reached the bottom of the shaft, he saw something that did not belong there. He saw walls that looked metallic and smooth. The surfaces looked too perfect to be natural. He stood there and felt a deep sense of fear because he knew someone had built it. A scientist from Argentina's Esperanza base also contacted Linda. He explained that teams sometimes pulled objects from ice cores that were more than 12,000 years old. These objects did not look natural. But every time they found something unusual, military personnel arrived quickly. They took the samples away and left no record behind. No reports, no papers, nothing remained. A pilot shared another strange detail. He said that while flying across Antarctica, he noticed a restricted area that did not appear on any official maps. Civilian flights could not enter that zone, and even military pilots needed special clearance. When he asked what was there, a superior gave him a short answer: sensitive research. Then he told him to stop asking questions. Linda noticed something important. All these people came from different backgrounds. They never met each other, yet their stories pointed in the same direction. Something large, structured, and hidden existed beneath the Antarctic ice. She placed all the testimonies in front of her and studied them carefully. The details connected like pieces of a puzzle. This was no longer a single strange event. This was a repeating pattern. She felt both excitement and fear. Because if this pattern were real, it meant something had stayed hidden for a very long time. But she still needed stronger proof. Then, in 2016, someone contacted her who would change everything she believed about this mystery. The buried structures. In 2016, Linda Moulton Howe received a message from a new source. He was a retired NORAD officer with classified clearance. He told her that he had worked on an Antarctic operation in the early 2000s. Linda later described him as the most credible source she had ever interviewed. He explained that beneath the West Antarctic ice sheet, at a depth of approximately 2 miles, there were structures that did not belong to nature. These were not rocks, and they were not ice formations. These were built forms, shaped with precision and clear design. He told her something even more shocking. These structures were older than the ice above them. They existed before the last ice age. That means they were created more than 12,000 years ago. At that time, Antarctica was not frozen. It was a green land with rivers and forests. This detail changed everything. He also said that scientists first detected these anomalies during Operation High Jump in 1946 to 1947. Admiral Richard Byrd led this mission. Official reports said the mission focused on training and research, but the classified data told a different story. Seismic surveys picked up unusual signals deep under the ice. These signals did not match any known geological structure. Officials recorded them, but they did not share them with the public. Over the next 70 years, several countries continued to study these locations. The United States, Russia, and later China carried out operations in Antarctica. They did not treat these missions as normal research. They treated them as recovery operations. The officer explained that teams were not only studying these sites, they were trying to extract materials and objects from them. Some areas became accessible through natural ice caves. In other places, teams drilled deep shafts to reach the structures. These were not small buildings or isolated objects. These were parts of a larger system. He spoke about an extended complex that looked like a city buried under ice. Some of the recovered objects still worked. Researchers did not understand how these devices operated, but they confirmed that they were functional. They moved these items to classified facilities for further study. Linda asked for proof. The officer provided coordinates and internal documents with redacted sections. These documents showed project names linked to those exact locations. For Linda, this moment changed everything. The pieces finally fit together, and the story became much larger than she had imagined. But one question still remained. If these structures were real, how did teams reach them deep beneath miles of ice? And what did they actually see when they went inside? The drilling operations. After learning about the buried structures, Linda Moulton Howe continued her investigation. She wanted to understand how teams actually reached those deep locations under the ice. Then she received another testimony that gave her a clear answer. This account came from a military contractor. He worked on a classified drilling operation in 2003. The contractor described how his team drilled a deep shaft into the Antarctic ice. The goal of the mission was not explained clearly. They only told him that they were accessing a geological anomaly. The walls looked white and blue with long frozen patterns. The light above him became smaller as he moved down. Soon, it looked like a small circle, and then it disappeared completely. Darkness surrounded him, and only his equipment lights showed the way. Then something changed. The ice did not fade slowly. It stopped suddenly. He reached the bottom and stepped off the platform. What he saw there shocked him. The space around him was large and open. It did not look natural. He saw markings on the walls that looked like symbols. These patterns did not match any known writing system. The team stood in silence. Then he noticed something ahead. A doorway stood in the wall. It looked like an entrance leading deeper inside. He wanted to move forward, but he did not have permission. Only people with higher clearance could enter that area. He watched as scientists and military personnel prepared to go inside. Then, his illness changed everything. He told Linda, "People should know we found something down there that changes history." Now, a question began to form in Linda's mind. If everything had been kept under such strict control, what had those teams actually reported back? Recovered technology evidence. After the drilling operations, Linda Moulton Howe focused on what teams actually recovered from those hidden places. She spoke with more witnesses who worked close to these missions. Their stories did not describe empty structures. One witness worked as a satellite imagery analyst. He told Linda that he had seen unusual shapes in Antarctic images before they were processed. Parts of the images were blurred or removed completely. He said someone had cleaned the data before releasing it to the public. Another witness worked as a materials scientist. He briefly studied samples taken from Antarctic recovery operations. He explained that the materials did not match anything in any known database. A logistics coordinator also shared important details. He worked with the NSF Antarctic program. He saw equipment lists that did not match any normal research mission. The lists included heavy excavation tools, sealed containers, and transport routes connected to the Department of Defense. Linda also learned that electronic equipment often failed near certain locations. Truth finally revealed. By 2020, Linda Moulton Howe had collected more than 15 credible testimonies. She had verified coordinates and matched details across many sources. These were statements from military personnel, scientists, contractors, and officers who had worked in Antarctica across different years. But something started to change. The people who trusted her began to die. When Linda heard the news, she felt the weight of what she carried. Then the retired NORAD officer died in 2022. Linda realized that she had become the last person holding all these accounts together. She understood that if she waited longer, all this information could disappear forever. In a 2023 interview, she spoke openly. She said, "I realized that if I didn't tell this story completely, with all the details and all the sources I could responsibly name, then it would die. These men trusted me. I have a responsibility to make sure their testimonies survive." That moment changed her decision. In late 2023, she began working on what she called a comprehensive Antarctic report. She gathered every testimony, every coordinate, every operation detail, and every piece of evidence from over 25 years of investigation. In early 2024, she released parts of this report through earthfiles.com. She shared coordinates where witnesses reported structures. She published the classified Operation High Jump documents from 1946 to 1947 with redacted sections. Then she did something important. She told others to check the evidence themselves. But the response from governments remained the same. There were no denials, no confirmations, and no explanations. Only silence continued. To Linda, that silence meant something very clear. She believed it confirmed that something important had been hidden for a very long time. This story reminds us that truth does not always come easily. There may still be many things hidden in this world, waiting to be understood. I hope you enjoyed this video. Make sure you give it a thumbs up. Also, consider subscribing to the channel if you haven't already. Until then, see ya.